it took one act of kindness to kind of draw her to this woman, and she, you know, she now sees this woman that she barely knows as her best friend. And so she gave okay, so I just finished going through the first episode, and it's intense from start to finish, right? So it opens with it opens with a flashback. So it's saying Texas, and it just says the past. And you have a woman, she's going to see someone in prison. You realize that she's going to see a woman named Karen. And by the looks of Karen has been in a tussle with some people, maybe a few people. And she looks battered and bruised. So she's not looking great at this point.
Do you remember me from the trial? Of course. You came every day. You sat in the same seat.
And so you find out the woman who's going to see her, her name is Mary Barlow. Her daughter disappeared 3 years ago, and she wants to know what Karen can tell her about what happened to her daughter. She's saying that she wanted to see Kit Parker. They just refer to him as Parker, but it's Kit Parker. Parker's his last name. And how he doesn't want to see her. I guess he's not taking it, you know, he just doesn't want to talk to her. And so she felt like the next best thing is to go and speak with Karen, because Karen and Parker had a romantic relationship. And she is basically, you know, asking her, like, what does she know? What does she remember about her daughter? And of course, Karen is saying, I don't remember. That was before I knew him. And she's not really, you know, being forthcoming, or she's saying that she doesn't remember a lot of things. And eventually Mary ends up telling her that they hired a private investigator, and they were able to get images of the last time that they believe her daughter was alive. She was in this convenience store, I guess gas station.
This man came out of the bathroom. Your man.
And you could see Parker in the photos. And, you know, she's saying that this is your man, your partner. And he's standing not 5 feet from my daughter. You expect me to believe that, you know, this man who is a serial killer was in this convenience store with my daughter, and you want me to believe that there is no connection.
A serial killer right next to her. My baby never comes home.
And so eventually it got to Karen basically shut down, and she just got up and she walked away. And of course, Mary is not happy because she just wants to know what happened to her daughter.
No. Sorry, I just want it.
So the next scene, it basically is still Texas, and now we're saying the present. And so you see Karen, who is, she has this tattoo on her arm that says Kit and Karen, with this heart. So clearly they were in love. It was intense. So, but then, you know, the next scene you see is her getting the tattoo covered up. And so, she's in a room, and Pete walks in, and this is when you realize that at this point she is going into witness protection. So when he walked in, he asked her if she was ready to become Emma.
Are you ready, Karen?
For what?
To be Emma.
So she's now in Louisiana, which is where they decided to move her. And he's now talking to her about the program and how, you know, this is going to be where she lives now. And of course, they're going to have to get her, you know, new IDs and all that kind of stuff with her new identity. And he told her that, you know, you're lucky, you know, not a lot of people get an opportunity to start over. And, you know, you can see that she's having difficulties dealing, you know, she's having issues. And he, you know, talked to her, and he was basically saying that, you know, but this twist to that is that all, you know, basically all of the bad things that you did, basically as Karen, has been wiped away, basically. But the downside of that is that all of the good things that you did is also gone. And so he ended up giving her a piece of paper and basically telling her to write down 3 things that she want as Emma. And the 3 things she wanted was to be, I guess, kind, brave, and safe, which is telling. And so he basically told her that that she should stay away from young women. I'm sure that's going to come up at some point. And that she needs to be careful about who, she form attachments to. And basically to lay low, like, don't draw attention to yourself. And then he asked her if she wrote the letter. I guess she was instructed to write a letter to Parker. And she did. And she reluctantly gave him the letter. You could tell she got emotional. And he left. So now we flash to the Barlows. So they are now sitting down. This is Mary is married to Saul. They have 2 children, Jake and Teresa. Teresa is their daughter who disappeared. So Saul, Mary, and Jake, they're now sitting at a table with a counselor. At this point, it's been 7 years since they've heard anything from her, and I think it's 7 years is the point where they can legally declare someone dead. After they've exhausted all of the options they have to locate this individual. And I think 7 years is when you can do that. And so now, basically, Saul and Jake, they want to move forward, and they've come to terms with the fact that she's gone, Teresa's gone, and they want to grieve, and kind of try to put their lives back together. And Teresa is not having it. She just does not. She doesn't want to come. She doesn't want to believe that her daughter is dead. She doesn't want to believe that she's never going to see her daughter again.
We don't need a bench, Saul. Teresa's not dead.
And it's obviously creating some conflict, because Saul, who's also her parent, her father, he wants to grieve, and he wants, like I said, to move forward. And at this point, I don't know if they're legally separated or divorced, or they're just separated, but at this point, they're not together as husband and wife. And the counselor basically said, do you understand, like, where Jake and Saul is coming from? Like, they're ready to they're ready to move on.
Mary, do you understand Saul's need to mourn?
And, she is basically saying that she's not going to do that, because, her instincts is telling her that their daughter is still alive and she's out there somewhere. So, the next scene is Emma/Karen. She is putting her groceries away. And she has a flashback of a time when her and Parker were together, and they seem very happy and very, very much in love.
Have you?
And so she, decided, she grabbed her keys and she left to go, at this point, we know not where. We go back to the Barlow's house, and Mary is sitting listening to, I don't know if that was Parker's interrogation or he was on the stand. I don't know if that was it had to be his interrogation. And it was quite chilling. There was no remorse. And then, you had, I don't know if that was a detective, describing in gruesome detail how he, murdered his victims.
You killed 9 women, Mr. Parker. You shattered the bones in their hands and feet so they couldn't defend themselves, and then you beat them to death with a hammer.
And then eventually Jake walked in, and he asked his mother, he's like, I really wish you would stop listening to, to those recordings. And at this point, like I said, it's been 7 years, and Parker has now finally agreed to talk with her. And so Jake, knowing this, he feels like, okay, something is strange. You know, why now all of a sudden does he want to talk to you? And Jake wanted to go with her.
I'm gonna come with you. After 4 years, he's finally agreed to see you. I want to know why.
And she, you know, decided, you know, that she didn't think that was a good idea. That she wanted to go and she wanted to talk to him on her own. So we flash back to Emma / Karen and we realize that she went to a local diner for dinner. And while she was sitting there, there was this beautiful black girl who was sitting across from her. She was just, oh my gosh, she was so adorable. And she's sitting across from her and she's watching her. And you could see Emma she noticed her watching. So she's like, probably like, oh, hell, does she recognize me or what? You know, she wasn't really sure why the girl was staring at her. And these 2 other girls walk in. And the white girl, and I'm only just descriptive. They didn't say their names. I didn't hear a name for either girl. So it was a white girl and a black girl. It was a white girl that walked over to the girl sitting in the booth. And she ended up grabbing her hair and telling her to get up.
Your hair is so pretty. Get up.
And so they end up, you know, pushing her on into the bathroom. And Emma could see, okay, something is up here. So she ended up going into the bathroom. Like she wanted to use the bathroom. And she went into the stall. And then you had this girl, this was the white girl, who was berating this girl, telling her how she's trash and how everybody who is in that house is trash and how they're low class and da-da-da-da-da. And how their parents didn't want them. And so you see that either she's in the foster home, she's in a group home, she's not with her family at this point.
Of slutty trash who no one wants. That is so dirty and disgusting that your own mamas and daddies didn't even want you.
And of course the girl got emotional and was like, my parents, you know, my family did want me, or my mom did want me, and da-da-da. So eventually, Emma came out of the stall and she stood there. And so the white girl had her phone and recorded, like, oh, do you want to be a part of this video too? So she ends up grabbing this child and slamming her head into the glass, into the mirror. Shattering the glass. This girl's face is all busted up.
Oh, do you want to be on her story?
And she ended up telling them to get out. So they both ran. And of course, the young girl, she's still there, scared to death. Because at this point, they had, you know, said all these hurtful things to her. They put gum in her head, all this stuff, right? And so she ends up picking up the girl's phone and handing it to her. And of course, she, you know, left. She basically told her that, you know, you're scared. I can see that you're scared. They know that you're scared. And basically, you need to work on that, not showing people your fear. Basically, if they see a weakness, they exploit it. That's just how the world is. And so she left. And of course, she didn't want to leave it there. And so the girl, you know, she catches up with her and they talk a little bit. And you find out that the young girl's name is Jess. And she's in a group home that her mom had a heart attack. And that's basically how she ended up in the system. Her mother had a heart attack and died, and there was no other family to take her in. And so that's how she ended up in the system. And you kind of get a feeling she was staring at her because she realized that she wasn't from that town. And she kept asking her, like, well, why would you know you're not from here? Like, why would you come here? She's basically saying, there ain't nothing here. Ain't nothing to do here. Nothing exciting ever happens here. Like, why would somebody move here? And so, of course, Em was like, well, you know, I just wanted a new start. And they talked a little bit because Emma understands where she's come from because she was in the system as well as a child. And she basically told her that to stay away from those girls. And she wanted to say goodnight. And so that's when she obviously introduced herself as Jess and she introduced herself as Emma. And they said their goodbyes. So then we flash to Parker, who is in prison. He has now received a letter that Karen/Emma sent. And it was basically saying that they need to let each other go.
That I have to live without you, and you without me. And we both have to let each other go.
And he was not happy, and he had a reaction, to say the least, to the letter, and he ended up tearing his cell up, tearing everything up, pulling the bed down, breaking the tape. He just had a fit. So there was a brief scene of Emma. It's the next day, and she knows that she has to get a job. So they've already supplied her with new IDs. They supplied her with a resume, and she went to, there's a salon who's looking for, they had a chair that they wanted to rent, and she went in to talk to the woman, and basically said, I'll do, I'm flexible. I can do whatever it is that you need me to do.
I'm good on details. I work hard. I can cut, and I can sweep the floor. I can make coffee. If you need me to step up because of the baby, then I can do that too.
And she was able to rent the chair. So the next scene is this meeting with John. So Mary and Jacob, they're meeting with this man named John. There's another woman there who runs an organization. Not runs it, but she works for an organization to help people coming out of prison kind of reintegrate into society. And so they thought that the organization that Mary and Jake, works for, would be a good fit for him because John is a repeat sex offender. So he was in prison for sex crimes. He is set to be released soon. And they, at first Mary's taken aback, and you're here for why now? And he started talking about how he did acknowledge his defect. He even referred to himself that he was a predator and how he would stalk his victims and the whole thing. And of course, that's not sitting well with them.
I was every woman's worst nightmare. I was the boogeyman. I stalked my victims. I was a predator.
And he also said that he felt like he would be an asset there because he could kind of fill in the gaps, because there's this disconnect between how these men or predators operate. There's a disconnect into how the, normal, regular people think these people act, move, and their motivations, as opposed to the actuality, because him having engaged in those behaviors, he felt like he could fill in the gaps when it comes to, things of that nature, how, women, take these precautions, but they don't really see the areas in which they need to work on.
About the gaps where ladies think that they're safe. I drove a cab. I worked as a cleaner.
And so she started asking him about him, okay, so why did you choose the victims that you chose? Initially, he was like, well, I'm not really here to talk about the things that I've done. I'm here to talk about basically giving you an overall understanding of how people like me operate. And she was like, no, I don't want an overall general. I want to know what makes a person a victim of yours.
I want to know what makes a woman your victim.
And that was a pretty intense scene. He could kind of sit there, but his eyes all bugged out, stunned, like he just never... there's not going to be any any answer that he can give her at this point. Okay, so I don't know if it's the next day after, I'm not sure. But Jess shows up at Emma's house. And of course, Emma's like, well, how did you know where I live? And of course, Jess said, I followed you. And, they started talking, and Jess wanted to just hang out. And, Emma was kind of like, I'm busy today. And a few nights prior, Emma found what she thought was a stray cat. And so she's been keeping this cat as a pet. And so she had this flyer saying that I saw the cat in the window, right? And so she showed her the flyer. She's like, that's Bella somebody's cat.
I saw her in the window. She's Bella Sharp's kitten.
And so Emma was like, oh, so are you going to tell her I have her cat? And so Jess was like, well, not if you hang out with me. So they're on a boat ride. And Jess started asking her if she believed in monsters. And then she mentioned someone named Abel, and how he was saying how there's a monster with scales that look like a crocodile and all that stuff, or alligator or something, that lives at the bottom of the swamp.
Abel says there's a swamp monster. 10-foot tall, skin all scale like an alligator.
And then Jess kind of screamed to scare Emma, and of course Emma was like, what are you talking about? What's going on, right? And so she was like, you was the one telling me not to be scared. And so they had a good laugh, and then it turned serious. And then she said, so Emma asked, who's Abel? And then Jess's whole demeanor changed, and she basically said that I can't talk about him.
I can't talk about Abel.
So they pull up to this shack. And they go in, and there's a bed there, there's clothes, so someone clearly, at some point lived there. And Jess was basically saying that, if she could stay there, she would, and no one would know where to find her except Emma. And so they were kind of laying on the bed, and she was kind of talking about some of her artwork that she has up on the wall, and eventually she ends up giving Emma this necklace, and basically telling Emma that she's like she considers Emma her best friend.
You're my true friend, Emma Hall.
And that was one of the saddest scenes in the movie. I was like, Lord, this child is so starved for attention that it just really didn't. It just took one act of kindness, even though she did, step in, but it took one act of kindness to kind of draw her to this woman, and she now sees this woman that she barely knows as her best friend. And so she gave her the necklace. And Emma, they had a moment. So I was like, oh wow, that was kind of, it was sweet, but it was also sad at the same time. So the day has finally come where Mary get to sit down and talk to Parker. And so she's going through the security checks, and they take her to the room, and she has a seat, and she's now waiting for them to bring him in. And then next the light starts flashing, and the guards are running, and she's trying to figure out, okay, what in the world is going on? And they get to his cell, and he is dead. Clearly, at this point, it looks like he committed suicide. And now they have to go and tell this woman, after 7 long years of trying to talk to this man, and on the day where it's actually supposed to happen, that he is dead. And you can imagine she was devastated, and it was an extremely emotional scene. So they flash to Emma. Pete arrives, and he starts asking her questions about who she's spoken to. Has she talked to anyone from her old life? Has she been watching the news? Has she been listening to the radio? And she's like, no. She was like, no. I just she's just been doing her. And of course he did the whole thing. So you haven't heard? And she's like, you're scaring me. And she now has to break the news to her that Parker is dead.
Christopher Parker's dead. He killed himself yesterday in prison.
And of course, there was another highly emotional scene, because she still loved him, and she probably feels guilty, because of the letter she wrote, basically telling him that it's over, and she probably feels like she contributed to that. But so that was another scene. So they flash to the Carlton Lodge Motel, and I believe this is where Jess works. And there was a woman there who was asking her, like, why. She asked her something to why she was there, why she was always there, something to that effect. And of course, Jess was like, I'm working. And so she noticed that Jess' necklace was gone, and she asked her about it. And she said, that necklace was given to you to protect you.
Without that necklace, you're not safe, Joe. That was a powerful stone. It was your protection.
And And Jess was like, she gave it to a friend. And then the woman was like, look around, you don't have any friends here. And the woman walked in the room and closed the door. So at this point, it's later in the evening, and Emma has all of these papers laid out in front of her. Her face is plastered on these papers. Of course, it's big news. This serial killer is dead, and she was obviously named as his accomplice, and so all of this stuff is coming back up again. There's this open bottle of pills, and she is kind of out of it. And then you hear Jess banging on the door, her wanting to come in.
Open up, please! Emma, please! Emma!
And Emma is really not in any condition she's not really, I'm not going to say she couldn't let her in. I just felt like she just wasn't in her right mind. But Jess is banging on the door, wanting to come in. You can see Emma's torn of what to do, and then eventually Jess runs away. We flash to Mary, and Mary does the unthinkable. In her grief, sorrow, I don't know. I think that she has just slightly gone insane. I don't even want to say slightly. So she ends up going to talk to John. John is the sexual predator that he wanted to volunteer, and she told him no. So now she's on his doorstep, and she's asking him all these questions about how, do he really think people can change? And, of course, he's saying that, yes, I do, if given the chance. And, she ends up manipulating him and basically blackmailing him, saying that she want him to find Emma, or at this point, as they know her as Karen, want him to find Karen. And of course, he's like, I don't want to do that. I do want to help you, but not like this. And this is, I'm feeling, it's making me feel uncomfortable. And she basically said that if he doesn't, he has 4 weeks to find this woman, or she's going to let everyone knows exactly who he is.
You have 4 weeks to find this person. I will make sure that everyone knows exactly who you are.
Now, of course, at this point, John could always go to his advocate and say that this woman showed up on my doorstep with this information, telling me that if I don't find this person, that she's going to do what, I guess. But he took the envelope. And so there's that. So Emma has now kind of come to her senses, and she is now gone to, it's still night, and so she is now gone to look for Jess to make sure Jess is okay. And of course, she went to the shack because, of course, she know that Jess wouldn't have gone home. She can't imagine that she would ever go back to the group home. She would go to her hideout. And, of course, she goes to the hideout, and she found Jess dead.
Jess! Jess!
So, it's another highly emotional scene. And then she heard people, and now she ends up having to go out a window, and she's now running through the woods, running for her life. And there's this brief flashback of some years ago where she was running for some unknown reason at this point. And there was also a flashback when she found Jess, and then there was a flashback of the past where she found, I don't know who that was, but it was clearly somebody who was close to her, somebody she, because it was another emotional scene.
Jess! Jess!
And then she made it home. She eventually got into a fight with somebody that ended up catching up with her, and she got away. She made it home. And then there was another flashback of Parker. She had apparently locked him in the basement. He was locked somewhere, and you could see him banging on the door. And then the final flashback, she was working in a salon, and she was sweeping up. It was after hours, so she was cleaning up. And someone walked in, and of course she was like, well, we're closed. And She turned and the person said that they needed a cut or something to that effect. And then the person sat in the chair. And she said that, you know, and after that, can you tell me the best place to get a drink here? And of course, then she ends up asking her name, and she introduced herself as Teresa.
And then I want to know the best bar in this town to go get trashed in.
What's your name?
Teresa.
So that's how this episode ends. So, wow. I mean, this first episode, it was a lot. It was a lot. I hope they're not all this emotionally charged, but that was a lot. So I'm going to end this here, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.